I have a particular character that I drew in Procreate, and I didn't like the way that she turned out. So this is the initial drawing of that character, and certain things happened during the time that I was painting this that were just kind of surprising. I like my initial sketch. It's fairly decent. I adjusted some proportions on it and laid in a text color. And then this was when I was really new to Procreate. And so the brushes that I was using were textured, and I was trying to lay in the forms, the light and shadow in the face, and things got blotchy pretty quickly. I really wanted the character to be a fair-skinned, sunburned person, actually an elf. The ears are really elf-like. I didn't want to make them stand out really far from the head and tall elf ears. I just wanted it to be kind of subtle, sort of like the Lord of the Rings movie elf ears were. They were bigger and a little pointy, but they were fairly much human ears. Anyway, then I got into trouble because very quickly I determined that she was going to have red hair. And that was a headache because rendering curly red hair is tough anyway. I frankly don't have that much experience with it. So what it ended up looking like was some kind of strange fuzzy hat, not hair. Then I went in and started working on the eyes. I figured that the hair can wait till later. I'll do that when I redraw, I thought. Well, as you can see, I started rendering the eyes. I wanted her to have bright green eyes. The eyes were a little sloppy and a little messy and a little not the same one side to the other, which honestly is a normal thing with humans. But in drawings, it sometimes just looks wrong. But I continued rendering on in her face, and so far I'm pretty much liking the character, but the hair is bothering me. So here's when I started working with layers, and I laid in a shadow layer and then picked out the lighted areas in the face, trying to lay in a little bit more detail. So you can see the layers flashing back and forth as I work into this. And it looks a little blotchy, but I really think that it's starting to take shape somewhat. One of the things that I wasn't doing early on when I started using Procreate was flipping an image. You can select an image, a group of layers, and you can manipulate them so that they're flipped horizontally, so the right and left of the drawing are reversed. And that's an easy way to see when there are flaws in the drawing. And there are some flaws in this drawing that I didn't notice because I hadn't done that. One side of the face is quite a bit wider than the other side of the face, and some things are a bit off kilter. But I proceeded to keep working on the details. I tried to give her some freckles, which are sort of spotty. There was a brush that had freckles. I'm not really fond of it. Then finally I flipped the face over, and you could see how far off kilter the face is. The right side on this image here is much wider than the left. So at this point, again, I'm going through the layers. I'm looking at what the different layer settings do. I also moved things around a bit to see if I could get things straightened out. And I really was starting to like it. I stuck a center line, which really isn't center, down the drawing so I could see how far it was off, and it's still not right. And now I'm redoing some highlights, and I thought, well, let's see if I can make the skin a little less blotchy. Again, I'm working on the hair. I'm only making it look more like a fur hat, some kind of bizarre fur hat, but it's alright. It's learning. Early days. Her mouth, her face, the whole thing. Now her nose looks funny to me, so I looked at it for a while. I'm not sure what I was doing at this point. I was probably making some adjustments to some of the finer features, and can't really tell. But then I went in and decided to start repainting, and things just continued to get a little bit patchy. But I carried on, trying to get some skin tones in, trying to put some details in, trying to make it a little bit better. So at this point I had posted the drawing on a board, and what I'm doing right here is I'm kind of using a layer to draw in like the muscles in the face. Don't know for sure if they're correct, but from what I know of anatomy, I think that, you know, that's fair. And then go in and block in the planes of the face and the head again, just to try to get some more practice with it. And this time, I mean, it's ugly. It's going to get uglier before it gets better. So I kept working. I gave her a muzzle that was a little bit too bright in contrast with the rest of the face. The thing about it is that anything I've done here, I can go back over. It's digital, it's easy to fix. And the nose is still wrong. The nose is lopsided. The face is still out of proportion. And I've opened her mouth because it looked funny to me. But now she kind of looks... Playing with the layers again. Checking to see what layers do what. Change the layers to multiply. There's some interesting imagery that comes out in that sequence of doing that, though, that is, to me, it was all learning, and some of the images that that came up during that process, I don't know, they were kind of compelling. I could go back and take any one of those images and work on it, and that's another thing that's really cool about working in Procreate. And I tried to play with a little more color, a different color. Again, I had so many layers going that it was difficult to know what was going to happen. Now, this layer was set to screen, which means that it will just lighten everything, and that's a bit too far. So now I'm finally getting around to manipulating the features, moving the eyes around and trying to get the face straightened out. And it seems to be working. It's a bit better. Still the hair, forget the hair. But I laid in more color, different color. And I really didn't go back and change the layers that I had. I would make some of them invisible. Now it really looks like a hat. And now I've managed to make it blotchy again. But again, things are crooked. So I could see what was going on. At this point, things got really crazy because I thought, well, let's just make this a kid. And so the kid that emerged was the craziest looking thing that I think I've ever done. But honestly, this was a lot of fun just to play with the image and see what crazy directions it might go. And it didn't stop there, as you'll see in a moment, because this really is a train wreck. The face is out of proportion. I tried to make it a little more childlike, and it's really too cartoony. Still playing with the facial features, and I increased the size of the eyes considerably. And this time, I think that the image is almost disturbing. It's kind of a it's an elf child who has a bit of I don't know. It's just kind of a almost sinister quality. Someone said uncanny. So it was time to get rid of the hair. I was going to deal with it later, but first I wanted to work on the structure of this strange kid's head. In another video, I pointed out that I really kind of do like the more alien-looking head shape. I find it somewhat appealing. It's difficult to render really well. So I had posted the image with no hair and started to render in the hair and make some adjustments based on some recommendations, which was to get a little less smooth, because I tend to default to the what I call the airbrush mode, where everything is smoothed out and everything is kind of one color, not one color, but one value. So this was my attempt to go in and remodel the face, and I think it worked pretty well. I took it from really scary evil elf child to something a little less foreboding. It's not really my style, but it was something that it was fun to play with, and now the shadows are way too stark right there. But again, since I'm working in layers, it doesn't really matter because I can adjust those as I go along. And I still wanted her to have a lot of color in her face. And I'm sure that I will revisit this particular little drawing again, but as you can see, I'm working in some of the lighter colors and adding more color and depth, and so it looks a little more painterly. There's a lot more depth and dimension to the image than there was. And the hair, again, I'm still learning how to do hair in Procreate. Obviously, there's really quite a bit that you can do to make a huge mess out of hair. But honestly, if you can just paint over it and start over again. I do like the fine details at the hairline. I want to keep those because I think those are effective. But I still needed to work out a bit more of the detail. I'm probably working on the eyelashes and the eyebrows here. Yep, adjusting the nose. And that's pretty much where I ended up, with a few details added at the end. So this is what I ended up with. Different.